My name is Sandra. For 6 years, I sat outside his office and he never once said my name. He didn't know I kept a notebook. He didn't know I remembered everything. He didn't know that the woman pouring his coffee was the daughter of the man he destroyed. This is the story of how I let a man destroy everything he built. I did not raise a finger to stop it. In fact, I held the door open and watched him walk through it. Some people might call that revenge. I call it watching the tide come in. You can scream at the ocean all you want, but it will still take the sand. This is my story. It started on a Tuesday. I remember because Tuesdays were the days Mr. Ashford held his morning meetings, and those meetings always left a stain on the rest of the week. I was sitting at my desk, the same worn leather chair I had been sitting in for 6 years, staring at the same crack in the wall that the maintenance crew never fixed. My coffee was cold, my head was pounding, and I could hear his voice booming through the closed door of the corner office. He was yelling again, not at me this time. It was someone from the IT department, a kid named Marcus who had only been with us for 3 months. I could not make out every word, but I heard enough. Incompetent. Lazy. Replaceable. The words hit the glass walls like shrapnel. I watched Marcus walk out with his shoulders hunched, his face the color of milk. He did not look at me. He just gathered his things and left. That was the 6th person to quit that month. Mr. Ashford's door swung open and he stood there, filling the frame like he owned the air itself. His suit was tailored, his shoes polished, his hair perfectly gray at the temples. He looked like the cover of a business magazine. He always looked like that, but his eyes were cold. They swept over the bullpen like a searchlight looking for someone else to burn. His gaze landed on me. Sandra. My desk was positioned right outside his office. That was not a promotion. That was placement. He wanted his secretary where he could see her, where he could snap his fingers and have her appear. I had been that secretary for 6 years. I had watched his children grow up in photographs on his desk. I had ordered his wife's birthday flowers. I had canceled his mistress's dinner reservations. I knew the combination to his safe, the password to his private server, and the name of his accountant. And he had no idea who I really was. He walked over and dropped a stack of papers on my desk. They landed with a slap. I need these contracts reviewed by noon. And call my wife. Tell her I am working late. Again. He smiled, but it did not reach his eyes. It never did. I nodded. Of course, Mr. Ashford. He turned and walked away, already pulling out his phone. He did not say please. He did not say thank you. He never did. I was furniture to him. A functional appliance. Something that sat outside his door and made his life easier. He paid me a salary, yes, but he never saw me. That was his mistake. You see, 10 years ago, my father worked for this company. His name was Daniel Reyes. He was a senior architect, one of the best in the city. He designed the original blueprint for the Ashford Tower, the very building where I now sat. He spent nights and weekends on that project. He believed in it. He believed in the man he worked for. He came home with ink stains on his cuffs and told me stories about the glass atrium and the way the light would hit it at sunset. And then one day, the project was finished and my father was called into the corner office. Mr. Ashford sat behind his desk and told my father that his position had been eliminated. Restructuring, he called it. There were no severance papers. There was no letter of recommendation. There was just a security guard standing by the elevator, waiting to escort him out. My father walked out of this building with a cardboard box and 30 years of loyalty. He never worked again. The shame of it ate him alive. He applied for hundreds of jobs, but the market was brutal and his age worked against him. He started drinking. My mother cried in the kitchen. We lost the house. By the time I was 18, my father was a ghost, shuffling around a rented apartment with hollow eyes. He died of a heart attack 5 years ago. The doctor said it was stress. I knew it was a broken heart. At the funeral, my mother held my hand and whispered, "Promise me you will not let bitterness take root in you." I did not answer. I could not lie to her, because even then, the seed was already planted. I just needed to wait for it to grow, so I applied for a job at Ashford Industries. I used my mother's maiden name. I dressed conservatively. I smiled in the interview and spoke softly. I was polite, efficient, invisible. I did not mention my father. I did not mention the house or the drinking or the cardboard box. I just sat there nodding, as Mr. Ashford explained that he needed a secretary who could anticipate his needs without being asked. "I can do that," I said, and I did. For 6 years, I anticipated his every need. I learned his coffee order, his golf handicap, his allergies. I learned which vendors he hated and which he tolerated. I learned that he cheated on his taxes, that he cut corners on safety inspections, that he stole credit for work done by people he later fired. I kept a notebook, not a digital file. Paper, old-fashioned, safe. I watched him destroy people. I watched him humiliate managers in front of their teams. I watched him lay off entire departments the week before Christmas. I watched him stand at his floor-to-ceiling windows and look down at the city like he was a god. And I smiled. I brought him coffee. I told his wife he was working late. I waited. The opportunity came in the spring. Ashford Industries was preparing for the biggest acquisition in its history. They were buying out a smaller competitor, a tech firm called Novalink. It was a hostile takeover, the kind Mr. Ashford excelled at. He would bleed them dry, strip their assets, and absorb their patents. It was a deal worth nearly $2 billion. He talked about it constantly. He paced his office, dictating terms to his lawyers, shouting at his accountants. He was obsessed. I was tasked with organizing the due diligence documents. Every contract, every financial statement, every encrypted file passed through my hands. I made copies of everything. I did it quietly, late at night, after everyone else had gone home. I used my own scanner. I stored the files on a drive that had no connection to the company network. I kept it in a box under my bed. Mr. Ashford did not notice. He was too busy being brilliant, too busy planning his victory. He would walk past my desk and barely glance at me. He would dictate emails without looking up. He would leave confidential documents face up on his desk while he took personal calls. His arrogance was not a flaw. It was a system. He genuinely believed that the rules applied to everyone but him. That belief was the door I had been waiting for. I started small. There was a minor compliance report due to the state regulator. I filed it a day late. Mr. Ashford got a warning letter. He blamed the mailroom. I filed a safety inspection report with an incorrect date. The fine was small, barely noticeable. He blamed the intern. I watched him rage at people who had done nothing wrong, and I felt nothing. No pity, no guilt, just a quiet, humming satisfaction. Then I moved to the acquisition. The Novalink deal required approval from the Federal Trade Commission. The application was hundreds of pages long, dense with legal language and financial disclosures. I was the one who formatted the final document. I was the one who checked the exhibits. I was the one who noticed the discrepancy. Novalink held a key patent. It was the crown jewel of the acquisition. Without it, the company was worth half as much. Mr. Ashford had valued it at $400 million, but the patent was about to expire. Not next year. Not in 6 months, in 3 weeks. The renewal application had been misfiled. There was a 60-day grace period, but that window was closing fast. If the patent lapsed, the deal would collapse. I held the information in my hands. I could have walked into his office and told him. I could have saved the deal. I could have been the hero. He might have thanked me. He might have seen me. He might have remembered my father's name. Instead, I deleted the email. I shredded the note. I closed the file and went home. The patent expired on a Friday. On Monday, Novalink's board voted to reject the acquisition. Mr. Ashford's stock dropped 12% in a single day. He fired the head of legal. He screamed at the CFO. He stood at his window with his back to the room, and I watched his reflection in the glass. His face was pale. His hands were shaking. I brought him his coffee. He did not drink it. The weeks that followed were beautiful, not in the obvious way. There were no fireworks, no dramatic confrontations. It was the slow, steady erosion of a man who believed he was made of stone. The investors grew nervous. The board started asking questions. Mr. Ashford held emergency meetings, made desperate calls, promised results he could not deliver. He stopped sleeping. His suits began to hang loose on his frame. His wife called the office looking for him. I told her he was in a meeting. The audit came in July. It was routine at first. Then the auditors found the first discrepancy, a vendor payment that did not match the contract. Then another. Then a pattern. Mr. Ashford had been siphoning funds through a shell company for years. It was not a massive amount. just enough to maintain his lifestyle, to pay for the second home in the Hamptons and the private school tuition. He had been careful. But careful is not invisible. I had known about the shell company for 3 years. I had filed the paperwork. I had watched him sign the checks. I had said nothing. The board launched an internal investigation. Mr. Ashford hired lawyers. He stopped shouting. He started whispering. He would sit in his office with the door closed, staring at his phone. He stopped looking at the city. He looked at the floor. I still brought him coffee. He still did not drink it. By September, the company was hemorrhaging money. The Novolink failure had shaken investor confidence. The audit revealed more than just the shell company. There were tax issues, safety violations, a sexual harassment lawsuit that had been quietly settled. None of it was new. It had all been hidden, buried, forgotten. I had simply moved a few files from the archive to the light. The board asked for Mr. Ashford's resignation. He refused. He stood in the boardroom and shouted about his legacy, his vision, his right to lead the company he had built. They listened politely. Then they voted. It was unanimous. He walked out of that room and past my desk. I stood up. I did not know why. It was an instinct. He stopped and looked at me, really looked. His eyes traveled over my face like he was seeing me for the first time. He opened his mouth. I thought he might ask me something. I thought he might finally say my name. Instead, he said, "Cancel my appointments for the rest of the week." I nodded. "Of course, Mr. Ashford." He walked to the elevator. I watched the doors close behind him. I stood there for a long time, listening to the hum of the building. Then I sat down and canceled his appointments. The company did not collapse overnight. It was slower than that, more dignified. They brought in a turnaround specialist, a woman from Chicago with sharp suits and a sharper tongue. She tried to salvage what was left. She cut costs, sold assets, laid off hundreds of employees. I watched people I had worked with for years clean out their desks. I helped them pack. I wished them luck. I did not tell them why they were losing their jobs, because they were losing them because of me. Because I had held the door open and let the tide come in. Because I had chosen revenge over mercy. I told myself it was justice. I told myself my father deserved to be remembered. I told myself that Mr. Ashford had earned every consequence that befell him, and all of that was true. But it was also true that the janitor lost his health insurance, and the receptionist had to pull her kids out of daycare, and the marketing director sold his wedding ring to make the mortgage payment. I did not sleep well that winter. Mr. Ashford did not go to prison. He had good lawyers. They negotiated a settlement, a fine, a lifetime ban from serving as a corporate officer. He was stripped of his title, his reputation, his purpose. I saw his photograph in the business section. He looked old. His hair was thinner. His eyes were hollow. I wondered if this was how my father looked, walking out of this building with his cardboard box. The company filed for bankruptcy in December. I was there on the last day. The building was quiet. Most of the lights were off. The atrium, the one my father had designed, was empty. The security guard at the front desk was reading a paperback. He nodded at me as I walked past. I went up to the corner office. The door was open. The furniture was still there, but it looked abandoned. The photographs were gone from the desk. The bookshelves were bare. The view of the city was still beautiful. I stood at the window and looked down at the streets. I could see people walking, cars moving, life continuing. It did not care that Ashford Industries was dead. I sat down in the leather chair. It was still warm. I leaned back and closed my eyes. I thought about my father. I thought about his ink-stained cuffs and his stories about the light. I thought about the cardboard box and the rented apartment and the funeral. I thought about the seed I had planted and the harvest I had reaped. I did not feel victorious. I did not feel satisfied. I felt tired. I felt old. I felt the weight of every lie I had told and every truth I had withheld. I had spent 6 years becoming invisible, and now I did not know how to be seen. The security guard knocked on the door. "Miss, we are locking up." I opened my eyes. I stood up. I walked out of the corner office and past my empty desk. I did not take anything with me. No photographs, no notebooks, no drives. I left it all behind. The evidence, the secrets, the silence. I rode the elevator down to the atrium. The guard held the door for me. I stepped out into the cold December air. It was starting to snow, small, soft flakes that melted on my skin. I stood on the sidewalk and looked up at the building. The glass atrium caught the fading light. It was beautiful. Just like my father said it would be, I walked away. That was 5 years ago. I do not work in corporate offices anymore. I run a small bookstore in a town you have never heard of. It is quiet here. The customers are kind. They do not ask about my past, and I do not offer it. I spend my days surrounded by paper and ink. I drink coffee that is hot. I sleep through the night more often than not. Sometimes I think about Mr. Ashford. I heard he moved to Florida. He lives in a condo near his daughter. She visits him on weekends. He plays golf badly with other retired men who once ran the world. He does not speak about the company. He does not speak about me. He probably does not remember my name. But I remember his, and I remember my father's. I remember the way he said my name. Sandra. He would draw it out like it was something precious. He called me his sunshine. He told me I could be anything, do anything, become anyone. He believed in me the way he believed in his work, with his whole heart. I used to think I had honored him. I used to think that bringing down the man who destroyed him was an act of love. Now I am not so sure. Love does not keep secrets. Love does not wait in the shadows. Love does not let the tide wash away the innocent along with the guilty. I do not regret what I did. That is the hardest part to admit. I do not regret a single keystroke, a single deletion, a single shred of paper. I regret the people I did not save. I regret the colleagues who lost their jobs because I was too focused on one man. I regret the janitor and the receptionist and the marketing director. I regret that I became as blind as the man I hated, but I cannot undo it. I can only carry it. There is a photograph on the wall of my bookstore. It is an old blueprint framed in simple wood. It shows the original design for the Ashford Tower. My father's signature is in the corner, small and neat. Daniel Reyes, Senior Architect. Customers sometimes ask about it. Is that a famous building? They say. I tell them yes, it was famous. It is gone now, but the blueprint remains. I am not looking for forgiveness. I am not looking for absolution. I am just telling my story. My name is Sandra. My father was Daniel Reyes, and I let a man's arrogance destroy his company. I held the door open. I watched him walk through, and I am still learning how to live with that. Sometimes, late at night, when the bookstore is empty and the snow is falling outside, I sit in my worn leather chair and I think about the corner office. I think about the view of the city and the cold coffee and the sound of his voice. I think about the door I held open and the man who walked through it. And I wonder, if I could go back to that Tuesday morning, if I could sit at that desk with the cracked wall and the cold coffee, if I could watch Marcus walk out with his shoulders hunched and Mr. Ashford standing in the doorframe with his cold eyes, would I do it all over again? I do not know the answer. I have asked myself 1,000 times. I have turned it over in my mind like a smooth stone, feeling its weight, tracing its edges. I have tried to imagine a different path, a different choice, a different ending. I have tried to picture myself walking into his office and telling him the truth about who I was and what I knew. And every time I see my father's face, I see the cardboard box, I see the hollow eyes, I see the heart attack on a Tuesday afternoon, the ambulance, the hospital room, the machine that beeped and then stopped beeping. And I think, maybe some debts can only be paid in fire. But fire burns everything. It does not discriminate. It consumes the guilty and the innocent alike. And when the flames die down, you are left standing in the ashes, alone. I am not alone. I have my bookstore. I have my customers. I have my mother, who calls every Sunday and tells me about her garden. I have the blueprint on the wall and the memory of my father's voice. I have the snow and the silence and the slow, steady rhythm of a life rebuilt. I have my story. And I am telling it now, not because I want you to understand, but because I need to understand myself. I need to lay the words down, one after another, like stepping stones across a river. I need to see where they lead. So here it is, the whole truth. The seed, the waiting, the harvest, the door, the tide, the ashes. My name is Sandra. This is what I did. I did not plan the revenge, not in the way people imagine. There was no map, no checklist, no dramatic monologue in the mirror. It was more like a slow realization, a gradual awareness of the power I held. I was invisible, but invisibility is its own kind of weapon. You can move through rooms without being seen. You can listen without being heard. You can wait. I waited 6 years. 6 years of bringing him coffee. 6 years of canceling his appointments. 6 years of smiling and nodding and pretending I did not remember the man who had destroyed my father. 6 years of learning his passwords, his habits, his weaknesses. 6 years of watching him destroy other people, knowing that I had the power to stop him and choosing not to use it. Not yet. Not yet. Because revenge is not a single act. It is a process. It is a garden you tend, slowly, patiently, season after season. You pull the weeds, you water the soil, you wait for the right moment to harvest. And when that moment comes, you do not hesitate. The Novolink patent was my first harvest. It was not the largest, but it was the sweetest. I watched the stock price drop and felt nothing. I watched him fire his head of legal and felt nothing. I watched him stand at the window with shaking hands and felt nothing. That should have frightened me, that I could cause such destruction and feel nothing. But I was beyond fear. I was beyond guilt. I was a woman possessed by a single, simple purpose. And then the audit came. I did not trigger the audit. That was luck or fate or the natural consequence of a man who had spent decades breaking rules. But I fed it. I gave the auditors breadcrumbs, a mismatched invoice here, a missing signature there. I did not hand them the evidence of the shell company. I just pointed them in the right direction and let them find it themselves. It took them 3 weeks. 3 weeks of digging, questioning, connecting dots. 3 weeks of Mr. Ashford growing paler and thinner and quieter. 3 weeks of me bringing him coffee he did not drink. And then the board meeting. The resignation. The elevator doors closing behind him. I stood at my desk and watched him go. I did not smile. I did not cry. I just watched. And then I sat down and canceled his appointments. The aftermath was not what I expected. I had spent so many years imagining his downfall that I had not considered what would come after. I had not considered the collateral damage. I had not considered that a company is not just a man. It is thousands of people, each with their own families, their own dreams, their own debts. When the layoffs began, I watched people I knew pack their things. Lisa from accounting, who had shown me how to navigate the payroll system. David from facilities, who always remembered my birthday. Maria from HR, who held the door for me on my first day. They smiled at me as they left. They wished me luck. They had no idea that I was the reason they were losing their jobs. I did not tell them. I could not. What would I say? I destroyed this company to avenge my father. I hope you understand. I hope you forgive me. But there is no forgiveness for something like that. There is only the weight you carry. I carried it home every night. I carried it through the empty apartment, the cold dinner, the sleepless hours. I carried it to the bookstore I would later open, stacking shelves and alphabetizing authors as if order could impose itself on chaos. I carried it to my mother's house on Sundays, sitting in her garden and listening to her talk about tomatoes and roses. I carried it to my father's grave, standing in the silence and trying to feel his approval. I do not know if he would approve. I do not know if he would recognize the daughter who spent 6 years lying, scheming, destroying. He raised me to be kind. He raised me to be honest. He raised me to believe that hard work and integrity would always win in the end. But he also raised me to be strong. He raised me to fight for what I believed in. He raised me to protect the people I loved. I loved him. I love him still. And I believed with every cell of my body that he deserved justice. But justice and revenge are not the same thing. Justice is blind. Revenge is personal. Justice seeks balance. Revenge seeks satisfaction. Justice restores. Revenge destroys. I destroyed. And now I live with that. The bookstore saved me. Not all at once, but slowly, the way water wears down stone. It started as a dream, a fantasy I indulged during those long nights in the empty apartment. I would close my eyes and imagine a small room filled with books, the smell of paper and dust, the sound of pages turning. I would imagine customers asking for recommendations, children sitting on the floor reading picture books, old men browsing the history section. I would imagine a life that was not defined by revenge. When Ashford Industries finally closed its doors, I had a small amount of savings. Not much, but enough. I found a town 3 states away, a place with a main street and a population of 12,000. I found a storefront that had been empty for 2 years. I signed the lease, painted the walls, built the shelves. I stocked the shelves with books I loved and books I had never read. I hung my father's blueprint on the wall. I named the store Ray's Books. It was the first time I had used my real name in 6 years. The first customer came in on a rainy Tuesday. She was an elderly woman looking for a mystery novel. I found her one by an author I had never heard of. She bought it, thanked me, and left. I stood behind the counter and watched her walk away. The bell above the door jingled. The rain tapped against the window. I cried for the first time in years. It was not a dramatic crying. It was not the release of grief or the catharsis of confession. It was just water leaking out of my eyes, silent and steady. I cried for my father. I cried for the janitor and the receptionist and the marketing director. I cried for the man I had destroyed and the daughter who visited him in Florida. I cried for myself, for the years I had spent invisible, for the woman I had become. And then I wiped my face and shelved the returns. The bookstore is not a penance. It is not a hiding place. It is a life. It is a quiet, ordinary life, and I am grateful for it. I wake up early, make coffee, open the doors. I talk to customers about books. I order new titles, return unsold copies, balance the accounts. I go home, eat dinner, read, sleep. I do it again the next day. Some days I forget. Not the facts, but the weight. I forget that I am a woman who destroyed a company. I forget that I held the door open and watched the tide come in. I forget that there are people who will never forgive me, even if they never know my name. And then something reminds me. A news article, a photograph, a name spoken in passing, and the weight returns, but it is lighter now, or I am stronger. I do not know which. Mr. Ashford's daughter called me once. It was 2 years after the bankruptcy. I was shelving new arrivals when the phone rang. A woman's voice, hesitant, uncertain. "Is this Sandra Ray's?" "Yes. This is Emily Ashford. I was Richard Ashford's daughter." I sat down. My legs would not hold me. I said nothing. "I am not calling to accuse you," she said. "I am calling to understand. My father is dying. He has pancreatic cancer. The doctors give him 6 months, maybe less. He does not talk about the company. He does not talk about the bankruptcy. But he talks about you." I could not speak. My throat was closed. My hands were shaking. "He says you were the best secretary he ever had. He says he does not know why you left. He says he should have thanked you more. He says he should have seen you." A long silence. I heard her breathing. I heard my own heartbeat. "I found your father's name," she said. "Daniel Ray's. I found the old employee records. I found the termination letter. I know what my father did to your family." Another silence. "I am not asking you to forgive him," she said. "I am not asking you to visit him. I wanted you to know that I know. And I am sorry. I am sorry for what he did to your father. I am sorry for what you did to mine. I am sorry for all of it." She hung up. I sat in the chair behind the counter for a long time. The bookstore was empty. The afternoon light slanted through the windows. The dust motes floated in the air. I looked at the blueprint on the wall, my father's signature small and neat in the corner. I did not call her back. I did not visit Mr. Ashford. I did not forgive him. I did not forgive myself. But I did not burn the photograph. I did not hide from the memory. I did not pretend that the call had not happened. I just sat there in the quiet and let the dust motes drift. He died 4 months later. I read the obituary online. Survived by his wife, his daughter, 2 grandchildren. Services private. In lieu of flowers, donations may be made to the Pancreatic Cancer Action Network. I closed the browser. I opened the store. I sold a romance novel to a young woman and a biography to an old man. I drank my coffee. I went home. That night I dreamed of my father. He was young, younger than I ever knew him. He was standing in the atrium of the Ashford Tower, looking up at the glass ceiling. The light was golden. He was smiling. "Sandra," he said, "my sunshine." I woke up with the sun in my eyes and tears on my face. I am telling you this story now because I believe that some truths must be spoken. Not to change the past, not to earn forgiveness, not to justify the unjustifiable, but because silence is its own kind of destruction, and I have spent too many years holding my tongue. I am not proud of what I did. I am not ashamed of it either. I am simply accountable for it. I am a woman who chose revenge over mercy, and I will carry that choice with me for the rest of my life. But I am also a woman who rebuilt herself, who opened a bookstore and hung her father's blueprint on the wall, who learned to accept the weight without letting it crush her, who still believes, despite everything, in the possibility of redemption. I do not know if redemption is real. I do not know if it is something you earn or something you receive or something you simply decide one day to grant yourself. I do not know if I deserve it. I do not know if anyone does. But I know this, I am still here. I am still living, still working, still waking up each morning to a world that continues, indifferent and beautiful. I am still Sandra. I am still my father's daughter. I am still the woman who held the door open and watched the tide come in. And I am still learning how to live with that. So this is my story. It is not a confession. It is not an apology. It is not a warning or a lesson or a guide. It is simply the truth as I have lived it. It is the seed, the waiting, the harvest. It is the door, the tide, the ashes. It is the blueprint on the wall and the dust motes in the light. It is my name, spoken aloud after years of silence. Sandra, and I am still here. The bookstore has been open for 3 years now. It is not profitable, not in the way that matters to accountants, but it pays for itself and that is enough. I have a routine. I have regular customers. I have a cat who adopted me, a gray tabby with one torn ear who appeared in the stockroom during a snowstorm and refused to leave. I named him Ash. He sleeps on the counter and bats at the dust motes. Some days, I think about the people I hurt. The janitor, the receptionist, the marketing director. I do not know where they are now. I do not know if they found new jobs, rebuilt their lives, recovered from the loss. I hope they did. I hope they are happy. I hope they never learn my name. Some days, I think about Mr. Ashford. I think about his daughter's voice on the phone, hesitant and brave. I think about the obituary, the private services, the donations in lieu of flowers. I think about the man who stood at the window with shaking hands, watching his empire crumble. I think about the man who fired my father, who stole his credit, who left him with nothing but a cardboard box and a broken heart. I think about the space between those two men. The space where justice becomes revenge, where righteousness becomes destruction, where the victim becomes the villain. I do not know where I stand in that space. I do not know if I am victim or villain or something in between. I do not know if the distinction even matters. What matters is that I am here, I am alive, I am accountable. And I am telling my story. I do not expect you to understand. I do not expect you to forgive me. I do not expect you to see yourself in my choices or my consequences. I am not offering a moral. I am not offering a lesson. I am offering only the truth as I have lived it. My name is Sandra. My father was Daniel Ray's. I let a man's arrogance destroy his company, and I am still learning how to live with that. The cat stretches on the counter. The dust motes drift through the light. The bell above the door jingles as a customer walks in. I look up and smile. Welcome to Ray's Books, I say. Can I help you find something? And the story continues. Not with revenge, not with redemption, not with resolution. Just with the ordinary, persistent act of living. Just with the next page waiting to be turned. Just with me, Sandra, still here, still telling the truth, still learning how to live with what I have done. And that, I think, is enough for now. The snow is falling again. It is December, 5 years since the last day at Ashford Tower. The windows of the bookstore are frosted at the corners. The streetlights cast orange pools on the sidewalk. Ash is curled on his blanket, purring in his sleep. I am sitting in my worn leather chair, the one I brought from the apartment, the one that used to sit outside Mr. Ashford's office. It is comfortable now, broken in, shaped to my body. I drink my coffee and watch the snow. The blueprint hangs on the wall. My father's signature, small and neat. Daniel Ray's, senior architect. I think about the atrium, the way the light hit it at sunset. I think about my father's ink-stained cuffs and his stories about the glass. I think about his voice saying my name. Sandra, my sunshine. I close my eyes. I listen to the cat purring, the snow falling, the quiet hum of the space heater. I listen to the silence and I let it hold me. This is not the end of the story. There is no end. There is only the continuing, the persistent, the ordinary act of living. There is only the next customer, the next book, the next snowfall. There is only the weight, carried day by day, and the strength that grows from carrying it. There is only me. Sandra, still here, still telling the truth, still learning how to live with what I have done, and that is enough. That has always been enough. But the story does not end there, because stories never really end. They just keep unfolding, like the snow outside the window, each flake separate and silent, each one landing on top of the last, building something new. I think about my mother often. She is 82 now, still tending her garden, still calling every Sunday. She never asks about the company. She never asks about the years I spent in that building. She asks about the bookstore, the cat, the weather. She tells me about her roses, her tomatoes, the neighbor's dog that keeps digging up her marigolds. She does not know what I did. Not the details. Not the patent, the audit, the shell company. Not the door I held open or the tide I let come in. I have never told her. I do not know if I ever will. Sometimes I think she suspects. Mothers always do, but she never asks. She just keeps talking about her garden, her voice warm and steady, and I listen and pretend that I am still the daughter she raised. The daughter who believed in hard work and integrity. The daughter who had not yet learned that sometimes the only way to fight fire is with fire. I visited her last spring. It was the first time I had been back to my hometown in 10 years. The house where I grew up is gone, replaced by a strip mall. The rented apartment where my father spent his last years has been renovated, painted beige, rented to someone else. My mother lives in a small bungalow now, with a porch and a garden and a bird feeder that the squirrels keep raiding. I sat on her porch and drank iced tea. She showed me her roses. She pointed out the marigolds the neighbor's dog had dug up. She asked about the bookstore. I told her about Ash and the mystery lady and the young couple who came in every Saturday looking for cookbooks. It was a good visit. It was ordinary. It was exactly what I needed. On the last day, as I was packing my bag, my mother came into the guest room. She stood in the doorway, her hands folded in front of her, her gray hair soft in the afternoon light. "Sandra," she said, "I want you to know something." I stopped folding my sweater. I looked at her. "Your father," she said, "he would be proud of you. Not for the revenge, not for the destruction, but for the rebuilding, for the bookstore, for the life you have made." I could not speak, my throat was closed, my eyes were burning. "He loved you so much," she said, "and he would want you to be happy. Not consumed, not haunted, just happy. Can you do that? Can you let yourself be happy?" I did not answer. I could not. I just nodded once and she nodded back, and then she turned and walked out of the room. I finished packing my bag. I drove home. I opened the bookstore the next morning. I sold a biography to an old man and a mystery to an elderly woman. I drank my coffee. I watched the dust motes drift through the light, and I thought about what my mother said. Can you let yourself be happy? I do not know the answer. I do not know if happiness is something you can choose, or something that chooses you, or something that slips through your fingers no matter how tightly you hold on. I do not know if I deserve happiness after everything I have done. I do not know if anyone deserves happiness, or if we just take it when we can and hope it lasts. But I am trying. That is what I told myself, standing behind the counter in the quiet afternoon light. I am trying. And maybe that is enough. The young couple came in on Saturday, as they always do. They were looking for a cookbook, something with Italian recipes. I showed them the new arrivals section. They found one with photographs of Tuscany on the cover. The woman smiled and said, "This is perfect." The man put his arm around her shoulders and said, "We will make tiramisu." I rang up the sale. I put the book in a bag. I handed it to them and said, "Enjoy." They walked out, the bell jingling behind them. I watched them through the window, crossing the street, disappearing into the afternoon. They were young and in love and planning to make tiramisu. They had no idea who I was or what I had done. To them, I was just the woman who sold books. That is the thing about rebuilding. You do not erase the past. You just build something new on top of it. The old foundation is still there, underneath, holding everything up. But the building itself is different. The rooms are brighter. The windows face the sun. I am not the same woman who sat outside Mr. Ashford's office, bringing him coffee he never drank. I am not the same woman who deleted emails and shredded notes and watched a man's empire crumble. I am not the same woman who stood on the sidewalk in the snow, looking up at the building my father built, feeling nothing and everything at once. I am someone else now, someone who sells books and feeds a cat and drinks hot coffee, someone who calls her mother on Sundays and talks about roses, someone who still carries the weight but carries it differently, not like a burden, more like a compass, a reminder of where I have been and who I do not want to become again. The snow continues to fall. Ash stirs in his sleep, twitching his torn ear. The space heater hums. The blueprint glows softly in the dim light. I think about the call from Emily Ashford. I think about her voice, hesitant and brave. I think about her father, dying in Florida, talking about the secretary who brought him coffee. I think about the space between what he did and what I did, the space where justice becomes revenge, where righteousness becomes destruction, where the victim becomes the villain. I do not know if I am a villain. I do not know if I am a victim. I do not know if those labels mean anything, or if they are just words we use to make ourselves feel better about the messiness of human behavior. What I know is this: I am accountable. I made choices. I took actions. I caused harm. And I am living with the consequences of those choices every day for the rest of my life. That is not punishment. That is just reality. But reality also includes the bookstore and the cat and the customer who comes in every Tuesday looking for mystery novels. Reality includes my mother's voice on the phone, and the snow falling outside, and the blueprint on the wall. Reality includes the young couple making tiramisu, and the elderly woman reading her mystery, and the old man browsing the history section. Reality includes joy alongside the wait. It includes ordinary, persistent, beautiful life. It includes the possibility of happiness, even for someone like me. I do not know if I will ever fully accept that possibility. I do not know if I will ever stop looking over my shoulder, waiting for the past to catch up with me. I do not know if I will ever forgive myself, or if forgiveness is even something I am entitled to. But I am still here. I am still trying. I am still showing up every morning to open the doors and sell books and live my life. And that, I think, is enough. That has always been enough. The snow has stopped. The streetlights flicker off, one by one, as the dawn approaches. Ash wakes up, stretches, yawns. He jumps down from the counter and pads over to his food bowl, meowing softly. I stand up from my chair. I stretch my arms over my head. I walk to the front door and unlock it, flipping the sign from closed to open. The morning is cold and clear. The snow on the sidewalk sparkles in the early light. I sweep the steps, scattering the fresh powder. I fill the bird feeder hanging from the eaves. I breathe in the cold air and watch my breath form clouds. A car drives by. A dog barks somewhere down the street. The church bell rings 8 times. I go back inside. I make a fresh pot of coffee. I straighten the shelves, dust the counter, arrange the display of new arrivals. Ash sits on his blanket, washing his face with one paw. The bell above the door jingles. I look up, ready to smile, ready to say, "Welcome to Ray's Books. Can I help you find something?" It is a woman. She is maybe 30, with dark hair and cautious eyes. She is holding a photograph in her hand. "Are you Sandra?" she asks. "Yes." She looks at the photograph. She looks at me. She looks at the blueprint on the wall. "My name is Lisa," she says. "I used to work at Ashford Industries. I was in accounting. You helped me learn the payroll system." I do not move. I do not breathe. The coffee pot beeps behind me. "I lost my job when the company went under," she says. "It took me 2 years to find another one. I had to pull my kids out of daycare. I almost lost my house." I open my mouth. Nothing comes out. "I am not here to accuse you," she says. "I am not here to blame you. I read about the investigation. I know what Mr. Ashford did. I know he deserved what happened." She pauses. Her eyes are steady. "But I also know that you knew about the patent. About the shell company, you knew and you did nothing. And I lost my job. I find my voice. It is small and cracked. I am sorry. I know you are," she says. "That is why I came. Not for an apology, not for an explanation. I came because I needed to see you. I needed to look at the woman who destroyed my life and see if she was a monster." She looks at me. Her eyes travel over my face, my hands, the bookstore behind me. "You are not a monster," she says. "You are just a woman who made choices like we all do. Some of them good, some of them terrible." She puts the photograph back in her purse. "I am not going to tell anyone," she says. "I am not going to post about it online or call the news. I just needed to say it. I needed you to know that I know, and I am still here, and I am still living my life." She turns to go. Then she stops. "The bookstore is nice," she says. "I hope it works out for you." She walks out. The bell jingles. The door swings shut behind her. I stand behind the counter for a long time. My coffee grows cold. Ash meows, but I do not hear him. I just stand there, staring at the door, feeling the weight shift inside me. She knew. She came. She looked at me. She said I was not a monster. I do not know if that is forgiveness. I do not know if it is absolution. I do not know if it changes anything or if it just adds another layer to the story, another stepping stone across the river. But it is something. It is not nothing. I pick up my coffee. It is cold. I drink it anyway. The bell jingles again. A young woman walks in, looking for a romance novel. I find her one by an author I love. She thanks me and leaves. The morning continues. The ordinary, persistent, beautiful morning. I am still here. I am still Sandra. I am still learning how to live with what I have done. And that is enough. That has always been enough. The years pass. The bookstore grows roots. I add a children's section in the corner with a small table and chairs and a basket of stuffed animals. I start a book club that meets on the first Thursday of every month. I hire a part-time assistant, a college student named Maya who loves poetry and always smells like vanilla. Ash grows old and slow. He sleeps more, moves less. His torn ear is ragged, his fur gray with age. He still sleeps on the counter, still bats at dust motes, still purrs when I scratch behind his good ear. My mother turns 85. Her garden is smaller now, her roses fewer. Her voice on the phone is thinner, but still warm. She talks about the birds at her feeder, the book she is reading, the neighbor's dog that still digs up her marigolds. I visit her twice a year. Spring and fall. We sit on her porch and drink iced tea and watch the light change. She does not ask about the past. I do not offer it. Sometimes I think about telling her. Sometimes I think about sitting down beside her and saying, "Mom, there is something I need you to know." But I never do. The words form in my throat and then dissolve. I do not know if I am protecting her or protecting myself. Maybe both, maybe neither. She will die without knowing what I did. That is a choice I have made. I do not know if it is the right one. I do not know if there is a right one. I just know that I love her. And I want her to be proud of me. And I am not sure she would be if she knew the whole truth. So I keep it from her. I keep it from everyone. I carry it alone. Except for Lisa. Lisa knows, and Emily Ashford knows. And now you know, that is 3 people. 4 if you count Mr. Ashford, who probably figured it out in the end. 5 if you count my father, who I like to think is watching from somewhere, still calling me his sunshine. 5 people who know what I did. 5 people who hold pieces of my truth. It is not a confession. It is not absolution. It is just the truth, scattered like seeds, waiting to grow into whatever they will grow into. I am 72 years old now. I am telling this story from the chair in my bookstore, with the snow falling outside and the cat purring on the counter and the blueprint glowing on the wall. I am old. I am tired. I am still here. My hands are spotted and thin. My hair is white. My voice is softer than it used to be. But my memory is sharp. I remember every detail of that Tuesday morning, the cold coffee and the cracked wall and the sound of Mr. Ashford's voice. I remember the patent and the audit and the elevator doors closing. I remember the snow on my skin and the empty atrium and the long drive to a town I had never seen. I remember my father's voice saying my name. Sandra, my sunshine. I have lived a long life. I have made choices, some good, some terrible. I have caused harm and I have tried to do good. I have been invisible and I have been seen. I have destroyed and I have rebuilt. I have carried the weight for 50 years, and it is lighter now. Not because I have forgiven myself, not because I have forgotten, but because I have learned that the weight is not something to be shed. It is something to be carried. It is part of me, like my white hair and my spotted hands and the sound of my father's voice in my memory. I am Sandra Reyes. I am the daughter of Daniel Reyes. I am the woman who let a man's arrogance destroy his company. And I am still here, still telling the truth, still learning how to live with what I have done. And that is enough. That has always been enough. The snow has started again. It is December, and the windows are frosted, and the streetlights are casting orange pools on the sidewalk. Ash is asleep on his blanket, dreaming of mice. The space heater hums. I am sitting in my worn leather chair, drinking coffee that is hot. The blueprint glows on the wall, my father's signature, small and neat. Daniel Reyes, senior architect. I close my eyes. I listen to the snow, the cat, the heater. I listen to the silence. And I think about the door I held open, the door I watched him walk through. I do not regret it. That is the hardest part to admit, even now, after 50 years. I do not regret a single keystroke, a single deletion, a single shred of paper. I regret the collateral damage. I regret the innocent people who got caught in the fire. But I do not regret the fire itself, because some debts can only be paid in fire. And I was the one who held the match. I open my eyes, the snow is still falling. The cat is still sleeping. The blueprint is still on the wall. I take a sip of my coffee. It is perfect. The bell above the door jingles. I look up, ready to smile, ready to say welcome to Ray's books. Can I help you find something? It is a young woman. She has dark hair and cautious eyes. She is holding a photograph in her hand. Are you Sandra? She asks. Yes. My name is Emily, she says. Emily Ashford. You knew my grandfather. I set down my coffee. My hands are steady. I have thought about you often, she says. My grandmother told me about you. She said you were the best secretary my grandfather ever had. She said he never stopped talking about you. She pauses. She looks at the blueprint on the wall. My father told me what you did, she says. My father, not my grandfather. He told me the whole story. He said you had every right. He said he did not blame you. She looks at me. Her eyes are the same as her father's. Hesitant. Brave. I am not here to forgive you, she says. I am not here to blame you. I am here because I want to understand. I want to know who you are. I want to know why you did it. I look at her. I look at the photograph in her hand. I look at the blueprint on the wall. I take a breath. I let it out. My name is Sandra, I say. My father was Daniel Ray's. And this is the story of how I let a man's arrogance destroy his company. She sits down. She listens. And I tell her everything.